Thank you very much, councillors, members of senior staff, members of the press and the gallery. Warm welcome to you for the April meeting of Temora Shire Council. I declare the meeting open. This meeting is being recorded and will be placed on Temora Shire Council's webpage for public information, and all present today are reminded that while speaking that we agree that our view and our comments are being recorded and published. And we're also reminded that if or when that we are speaking, that we are of course to be respectful of others and use the appropriate language as we do here at Temora Shire. Temora Shire Council accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures during this council meeting. Now, I would like to introduce at this time Pastor Patricia Morris. And of course, Pastor Morris is the new council meeting media content officer. And to you, Pastor Morris, a warm welcome to the chamber. Of course, we know you're a regular visitor here as chairman of the Temora Christian Leaders Group, but it's great to have you here also in that other important capacity. So thank you so much. And we also introduce to you, councillors and members of senior staff, a new member of the Temora Independent team. Of course, the regular Mr. Wilson there. We have the new journalist that replaces Mr. Mangelsdorf, Miss Emily Downs. Great to have you in the chamber, Miss Downs, and particularly, she's won me over already, councillors, because she's a big John Wayne fan. So so we're very tickled-pink to have her in Temora Shire. So a warm welcome. Now, let's go to our opening prayer, and that's in the hands of Mrs. Joy Cornford from the Temora Baptist Church. Thank you, Mrs. Cornford.
Our Father, council members have requested that a prayer be used at the commencement of their meetings, and so we come before you to pray for each councillor today. We ask that you'll give to each of them discernment, wisdom and knowledge to know how best to make the necessary decisions concerning the agendas before them. We ask that you'll give them clarity of thought and speech, and may all of these decisions be for the betterment of the whole community. Guide them, we pray, as they continue in this meeting, and all these things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mrs. Cornford, very, very much for those encouraging words. Councillors, we do have an apology today, and that is from our fellow councillor and Councillor Reinhold. It's her turn to have COVID, so she is self-isolating, and she seems to be in fine spirits, judging from the conversations I've had with her. So that's good. But we do continue to wish her a speedy recovery. Is no further apologies? Is someone prepared to move that we accept that apology, please? Councillor Mclaren, Councillor Oliver. Thank you. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Do we have any interest to be declared at this time, please, councillors? Councillor Good.
Sorry, I'll declare an interest in the confidential meeting. I have let the General Manager know about that. But...
Thanks, Councillor Good. Further declarations at this time, Councillor Judd.
Oh, just a letter in correspondence from Mary Park Senior Housing. So.
Oh yes, you're the chairman. Thank you, Councillor Judd. Further declarations at this time, the Director of Environmental Services.
Yeah, 4.5 Main Street upgrade assets and operation, and 11.1 footpath dining policy on page 108.
Thank you. No further. Just remember, councillors, if you think of it later, you obviously bring it up then, but it just speeds things up a little for the team to my right. Okay, so let's now, we don't have any public presentations. Confirmation, please, of the March meeting minutes of Temora Shire Council, please, that they are received as a true and correct record. Thank you. The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Oliver, moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Matters arising, Mr. General Manager?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, let's now proceed to our business paper, page 11. We have the minutes of the Assets and Operations Committee, and the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, is the chairman.
Move the report be received.
Thank you. The Deputy Mayor has moved that the report's received. Is there a seconder for the motion, please? Thank you, Councillor Good. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. And declare the motion carried. Thank you. The Deputy Mayor, did you have anything you wish to particularly highlight as chairman of that committee, please?
No, Mr Mayor, not this stage.
Thank you. Councillors, the report's open for comment. Any comments? Councillor Judd.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Item 4.5, Hodgson Street upgrade.
Oh, yeah.
Declare a pecuniary interest, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. The Director of Environmental Services declared his interest and vacating the chamber. Councillor Judd, can you just, thank you. Councillor Mclaren?
I'd just like to declare a non-pecuniary interest in this matter to having a residential property in that area.
Thanks, Councillor Mclaren. I now go to Councillor Judd.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm unfortunately, I was apology for the committee meetings, but generally happy with the thrust of the recommendation, and but I think, as long as we can do some work on the final design on especially the southern block, I think we'd have, as long as we can try and get 5 trees on either side into the block, and I had a look again today, and the light poles are really sitting on the curb, and I think we was a bit of we could have realigned some of the blisters there and make them bigger, especially to help the entertainment places like the hotel and the Tiger Moth Cafe and other cafes and Dimes and Dust. I think we could really make that in a really good eating areas. If we put a bit of thought in where we put the blisters and where we put the trees, and I'd like to see a bit more work on it. But at this stage, I'm generally happy with the thrust of the motion, but probably maybe I'd like to see maybe a small committee look at helping the engineers to come up with a final proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Judd. Councillors, any other comments in relation to the report and recommendations contained in the Assets and Operations Committee? Councillor Mclaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I did note in the resolution that we model it on the shell block. I've since had a look at the southern block, and although there are 4 sets of Chinese elms in the shell block, we could almost have 5, but the more the merrier, as long as we can fit a semi-trailer in between the blisters. So,
I'm sure that.
Thank
You, Councillor McLaren. I'm sure that'll be taken into account. Yeah, that's noted. Thank you. Well, councillors, the report and recommendations contained therein. Is someone prepared to move their adoption, or is there an alternate motion? The Deputy Mayor. Hang on. Sorry. The Deputy Mayor.
I'll move the report be adopted as is.
Thank you. The Deputy Mayor has moved the Assets and Operations Committee report and recommendations are adopted. Second for the motion, Councillor Mclaren moved. Second is further discussion. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Thank you very much, councillors. But again, just keeping in mind that will be a future report. And then, of course, council have got to consider how, besides looking at the report, how the heck that it'll be funded. Now, let's go, councillors, over to page 67, the minutes of the Economic Development and Visitations Committee, and Councillor Mclaren's the chairman.
thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that the report be received.
Thank you. Councillor Mclaren has moved the reports received. Is there a second for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Bushell. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare that motion carried. Thank you. Councillor Mclaren, anything that you'd like to highlight from that meeting as the chairman? Thank you.
Just to highlight the importance of the Bush Bursary program for training medical students, giving them a contact with the rural life. It's great to continue to support that program, but otherwise the resolutions are as presented.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Mclaren. Any further discussion on the report? If not, is someone prepared to move the report and recommendations, or is there an alternative? Councillor Good? Hang on. Thank you. Councillor Good.
I move the report be accepted as is.
Thank you. Councillor Good's moving that the report and recommendations of the Economic Development Visitations Committee report be adopted. Councillor Oliver has seconded the motion. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Over to page 85, the minutes of the Airdrum Users Committee meeting. And, well, this was interesting. We had the long-standing chairman, Councillor Judd, was not available. He asked Councillor Oliver to act as the chairman. He couldn't do it. So Councillor Oliver asked me if I'd do it, and I certainly did do it. And I thank the engineer for his assistance as well. So would someone be prepared to move that report be received, please? Councillor Judd, thank you. Councillor Oliver, moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Councillors, there did seem to be, just as the acting chairman for that meeting, there did seem to be certainly some discussions around the ADF parachuting schools. I don't know whether the engineer would like to tease that out a bit further, or it's just simply reflected in the recommendation to council. The engineer?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Listen, I'm happy with seeing the recommendation. There is going to be a meeting. They're going to come to the next. We're going to have another user committee next month, and the ADF are going to come to that. So,
thank you. So, Councillor Judd, you're happy with that? Yeah, thank you. Councillor Oliver?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry for not being at that meeting.
No, that's all right.
Had a pretty good excuse. I had cataract surgery done, so I've got my black eye fitted. I just got to fit me white eye. But yeah, no, I think this ADF parachuting school could be a really good thing for the Airdrum out there. Potential income source.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can see nothing but good coming from this. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Oliver. I agree with you, and I see nods around the chamber as well. And again, it's an area like our sporting grounds and all functions of council. We're always looking for opportunities to enhance the usage and income at the same time. So, very good. There's nothing further from the Airdrum Users report. The Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. On 4.6 with the Mustang Adventure Flight, just note the resolution there from the committees. Asked Mr. Deeth to consult with the Aviation Museum and also and also with the discuss with the Aviation Museum how they going to sort of coexist. I just felt that maybe council should be involved in that somewhere too, not just those two. I think council should be a part of that resolution as well.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and I have to agree with you. I think maybe the officers have perhaps presumed that. However, we should never assume. The engineer, you have a view?
thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I definitely think we should be included in the resolution to be the best bet.
Yeah, so just include that in the overall. Councillor Irvine.
Is Frank Deeth a close relation to Steve Deeth, who's got a very solid relationship with the museum already?
Who are you directing the question to, Councillor Irvine?
Oh, to the engineer.
To the
I
engineer.
imagine.
The engineer. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I wouldn't have a clue. Yeah,
Was there any?
Further, Councillor Irvine?
Yeah, to the engineer. Any indication as to where he's from? I think Steve's from Albury.
The engineer.
No, don't have a clue.
No, that's okay.
To be honest, everything's been done through the Economic Development Officer. I did field the first email and I passed it straight on. I guess the basis for the meeting between the two is that obviously both want airspace at the same time, and it's just a matter of being able to. Obviously, they want to run the flights when the displays are happening, so it's they just got to work through that. But all in all, it seems pretty positive.
Thank you. Councillor Irvine, further?
Just back to the engineer then.
Yes.
From my perspective, if it is the close relationship, which I think it is, and the fact that Steve Death brings his Trojan up and is involved in the displays at the museum, realistically, council doesn't have much of a role in relation. It's just pretty much up to the museum and Frank to sort it out, isn't it?
Thank you, Councillor Irvine. The engineer.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Listen, the only thing I'd say that we would need to be involved is us as the aerodrome operator, and as to whether, it would just be monitoring the conditions that were put in place and that, everything was fair. That's my thought. We want as many operators out there as we can to operate amicably or happily, and we just probably need to monitor that everything's fair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Irvine. Councillors, if there's no further comment or discussions in relation to the Airdrum Music Committee report, is someone prepared to move the report recommendations, perhaps unless the Deputy Mayor, did you want to alter on page 95 the motion in relation to committee resolved recommend to council that Mr. Death consults with council and the Timor Aviation Museum?
Yes.
Would you like to move that and that the remainder of the report be adopted?
I'll do that, Mr. Mayor, yes.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second for Councillor Judd? Thank you. Moved and seconded. Further discussion? If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Councillors, let's now go to page 98, the delegates' reports. Do we have delegates' reports, please? The only delegates' report I have that we have our Rerock and Riverina J board meetings tomorrow in Wagga Wagga. And one of the main items on the agenda is to discuss the proposed workshop to consider that one organisation, one regional organisation that we've looked at before. As you know, we wanted to go that company limited by guaranteeing the government forced our hand to stay in the JO for 2 years, which is, I think, ending this year, isn't it, Mr. General Manager?
Correct.
Yeah, this year. So that's a recommendation that will be considered tomorrow, and of course the board will also be considering a recommendation I'll be putting to them as the chairman about extending the contract of the Chief Executive Officer, Mrs. Briggs, for a period of 12 months. That's all that she's asked for at this stage, pending any outcomes of reviews that obviously this council and others who are members of both groups will be involved with in terms of appropriate workshops, discussions, in terms of possible ways forward. The other one, councillors, of course, is our Sportsman of the Year awards. As you know, that we usually are on the second Friday. We haven't been able to have the full dinner ceremonies for the last 2 years. We did have a smaller ceremony last year for the categories that we had nominations for, and that was appropriate. We won't be having, again, the large dinner this year, simply because of the low number of nominations, which we half expected on reflection, because you've still got the aftermath of COVID, that wretched COVID. But having said that, we have received outstanding nominations for junior Sportsman of the Year, Intermediate, and some other categories, and certainly outstanding support for the grants that we've put on offer as well. So there'll be a ceremony in the Narrabri Room at the Ex-Servicemen's Club on the normal meeting night in June, I think it's the 15th, the third Wednesday. So that's for Council's information, being a subcommittee of Council, of course, and that's all I had for the moment. Thank you. Delegates' reports. Councillor Mclaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to mention that a number of us attended the Arts Centre opening recently, and Federal Member Mr McCormack was there in attendance to officially open the centre. I just wanted to say that the Cultural Officer, Amanda Gay, did a magnificent job decorating, fulfilling that building, making it look incredibly classy. The arts representative from Wagga, I forget his name.
Mr Korylowitz.
Yes, I asked him what he thought of the facility. Was it 5-star? And he said it was 11 stars. So he said he was very impressed. I don't know, that's that artistic thing, 11 stars. But no, I just wanted to pass on what a wonderful job for the staff to finish the facility in such a short amount of time and have it presented so well. It's a real asset to the community, and a job well done.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mclaren. You're quite right. It was a lovely occasion, and as we said on the night, and we say it again in this chamber to reiterate what you've said, that the Temora Arts Centre manager, Ms Amanda Gay, she's put a heck of a lot of work into that, and we do appreciate it. But also, as the project manager, the Director of Environmental Services, of course, the town planner did a very good job as the Master of Ceremonies. She did a very, very good job. But everybody involved, you're quite right, it was a great occasion, and now let's hope it's used to its fullest potential and can hopefully make us a bit of money along the journey as well. So thanks, Councillor Mclaren, very much. Further delegates' reports. Councillors, we go to the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Laura and I represented Council at the Rotary district or regional Rotary conference at held at the Aviation Museum. It was excellent night. Good to see 200 odd people around the
odd people.
Sorry, not 200 plus
approximately
people. Plus people. Not a good choice of words. Plus people are from a wide area. Actually goes right down to the south coast, so it's a big area, but everyone enjoyed themselves. Had a very good night. And I think one of the things that was a highlight was the Fenman band members got together, and they haven't they've aged, but they've still got it. So terrific night.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Mr Deputy Mayor, and thank you for attending that dinner on our behalf. I was also honoured to have been asked to officially open the conference, and I was there in full regalia, and unfortunately, whilst I was plugging everything about Temora Shire, what's special, I actually did in fact forget to declare it open, but anyway, forgive and forget, that's my motto. But Councillor Judd, I know, is a past president and Paul Harris Fellow of Rotary. I'm sure that you would have been very proud of your colleagues and how they hosted that very significant event.
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Mr Mayor, it was a good weekend. This was a conference we nearly got 2 years ago, but one of the things that we started to talk 2 years ago was that, we're trying to promote Temora Shire as a venue for conferences, and this was probably the first really attempt we've had of having a conference in Temora and to see how things would go. So, we had a few teething problems, but most times we just passed with flying colours. So, yes, we sort of. I know we had the conference here back in 07, I think it was, and there was about 500-600 people then, but we had about 250 at this conference. But when you look at it, have any more than that is very hard to accommodate and look after everyone properly. So 250 is about a good number for a conference in Temora. So we found that out, and that's when we, our economic development manager, if you're looking for future conferences, well, you can certainly go on the record that Rotary had in Tamora. It was well done.
Thank you very much, Councillor Judd. And I have to say the comments that even I received on that Saturday morning about our Tamora Memorial Town Hall as a venue, it was just so heartwarming to hear all these people from the cities and other areas that were commenting about what a magnificent facility it was, and that sort of meant even more, to be quite frank, coming from them. So thanks, Councillor Judd. Further delegates' reports, please. If not, let us proceed over to page 99, the Mayor's report for the month of March. And there's a recommendation on page 103 that the Mayor's report be noted. Councillor Good.
I'll move that way.
Thank you. Move the adoption of the recommendation that the Mayor's report be noted. Seconder for the motion, please. Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Moved and seconded that the Mayor's report be noted for the month of March. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Let's go over to councillors, to our staff reports on page 104. Motion to receive staff reports, please. Councillor Judd, Councillor Mclaren, moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare that motion carried. Thank you. Over to page 105, General Manager's Report, 10.1, the calendar of events.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As written, councillors.
Thank you. Councillors, the calendar of event is there, and there is a recommendation on the bottom of page 105 that we note the report. Councillor Bushell, you'll move the recommendation. We note the report. Thank you. Councillor Good, moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare that motion carried. Thank you very much. Over to page 106, 10.2, the seals for April, the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As you can see, councillors, there is only one document to be affixed with the seal this month.
And the deed of...
Actually two, sorry. The deed of variation for aged care services as well. It's an extension to 30th of June next year. And the other one, the Swagman Honey, is a lease of premises at the Agricultural Innovation Centre, which of course we own.
Thank you very much, councillors.
Not own, we control.
Yes, well, it's in trust with council. Councillor Oliver.
I'll move that way, Mr Mayor.
So you'll move the recommendation that the council seal is affixed to the licence agreement Swagman Honey Proprietary Limited, and further the deed of variation in relation to aged care services to the end of June of this year, 2023, I beg your pardon. Moved by Councillor Oliver. Is there a second for the motion, please? Councillor Good, thank you. Moved, seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare that motion carried. Thank you. Over to page 107, 10.3, disclosure of interest returns, the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a requirement of the Act to report to Council on the disclosure of interest returns till the 30th of June 22, and there is a copy attached, not to the document, but you'll have it as a separate attachment.
So all councillors receive those? Yep. Thank you. Thanks, Mr General Manager. Councillors, there is a recommendation there for you to consider that Council note the disclosure of interest returns. Councillor Irvine.
Just a question to the General Manager. The redactions in these, I can understand the signature being redacted, but I don't understand why the rest of the information, such as interest in property and stuff's redacted. Have you got an explanation for that?
Thank you, Councillor Irvine. I go to the General Manager. Being a question without notice, of course, we give him a little bit of extra time to look. We can take it on notice. The General Manager.
Yeah, we will take that on notice, Mr Mayor.
The real property in Temora certainly should be included. Source of income, not necessarily, because I think that's there are some privacy issues there as well.
Thank you. So I'll take that on notice, Councillor Irvine. Thank you very much. And you'll let Council know in due course of, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Councillors, there is that recommendation there, and of course the General Manager will update us in relation to the redaction information. Is there a mover, Councillor Oliver?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll move that we note the declaration of
Thank you
interest
for
returns.
the disclosures. Thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion, please? Thank you, Councillor Good. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Is there anything of an urgent, late nature from the General Manager, please?
No, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Let's now, councillors, here it is, missing in action. Page 108, the Engineering Services Department's report. We have 11.1, the draft outdoor dining and street policy, and I would assume the Engineering Services Manager will defer to the Town Planner.
Just declaring a pecuniary interest, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. The Director of Environmental Services declared a pecuniary interest and is vacating the chamber. And the engineer has given the thumbs up to defer to the Town Planner for 11.1, the outdoor dining and street policy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this report follows on from the March committee reports. So there was consultation requested following those committee meetings, and then the updated version of the draft outdoor dining and street soil policy is attached, and there's a recommendation there for Council's consideration.
Thanks very much, Madam Town Planner. Councillors, you will note there that there is, and of course the Town Planner is acting as per the Access and Equity Committee's resolution about these consultant fees, which adds up to around 8,000-ish. Is that, really, I'd ask the question, is that really necessary? But now, while you're thinking on that, I go to Councillor Irvine.
Well, just a question to the Town Planner. My recollection of the discussions were that nothing permanent was to remain.
Yep, that's my recollection as well.
Yet the draft contains a reference to a clause which says unless a written exemption has been provided, and that is in the preamble or the notes at the beginning. It's also mentioned at the end of section 1. And then in section 2 it's mentioned at point H, and H sets up a little bit of a situation where there can be some conflict, I think, with point C in section 4. So H says all furniture, including temporary bollards, is stored inside after hours, and then we refer back to this unless a written exemption has been provided. But I suppose the point of conflict I've got here is this use of this temporary bollards, including temporary bollards, and then in section 4 at point C it says bollards and chains will not be permitted. So
there's a contradiction.
There's a contradiction in that respect. And then further on, there's another reference at section 4, point H, unless council has provided written approval for specific items to remain. It just personally, my view on the dining on the street policy is that council and the community don't achieve any income from this process. whereas in some bigger councils or city councils they do. So therefore, this undertaking is being granted, I suppose, through the good grace of the residents and the community. So there's no rights that can be gleaned or determined from the shop owners. Therefore, I think wherever this street dining does take place, the considerations of the shop owner will come very much as a secondary element to the access and egress of the general community and the amenity for the people of the town, and the interests of the shopkeeper should come second in that conversation. And that's my opinion of this at the moment. If there was money changing hands and an agreement whereby some rights or obligations or expectations were assumed by the shopkeeper, then there may be a case for them to argue that way. But I really do think in this particular instance, they're being given the opportunity to expand their retail space on public land, and therefore the public interests should be front of mind in every consideration in relation to this.
Thanks very much, Councillor Irvine. I go to the town planner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the intention of this is to really see this as a mutually beneficial exercise, because I consider that our town and our village does benefit by having this outdoor dining and the atmosphere that creates by having the additional infrastructure that encourages people to interact in the space. It's not just a vacant footpath, it is our central business district, and we want that to be attractive and enticing for people to stop and spend time there. So I see it being very important. In relation to the matter about permanent furniture, and what it's really looking at is that an applicant could make a request for council to consider it. In the way that it might be considered permanent, it's not necessarily fixing an item to the footpath, but it could be perhaps a heavy table that could be, a request could be made for that to be placed outside, and if it was too heavy for anyone to pick up easily, they could make the case that they were requesting that be kept outside. But it is totally at council's discretion. If they don't consider that to be appropriate in that location, they could refuse that request. But the policy leaves that open for council to consider under the circumstances, but there may not be any circumstances where it is deemed appropriate. So it's...
And council can very well, if they have a mind to, take that out as even an option.
They could. So this policy, it hasn't been on public exhibition yet. So the request is to place it on public exhibition. Councillors and members of the community can make further submissions, and it will need to be brought back to council for their further consideration before it becomes adopted as policy. But yeah, as I stated earlier, I do think it is very important to encourage the attractiveness of our central business district, and having space for outdoor dining and retail that encourages that, creates interest, I think is very important.
Thank you, Madam Town Planner. I do think that everyone in this chamber would agree that that's exactly what we're after. But I think from what I'm reading, Councillor Irvine, your main priority was that we need to remember, whilst we need to do that, we must have the pedestrians, whether they're able-bodied or whether they're in mobility vehicles or whatever it is, that they have that 100% free access to the footpath. Councillor Irvine?
Yeah, and just in response and in support of what you've just stated, there appears to be something, I suppose it's a case of give an inch, they'll take a mile, and I think we need to be very forthright and very firm initially so that the retail owners and the operators of these establishments are fully aware of their obligations, because even this notional 1.5 metres doesn't allow a lady with a double pram to pass a gopher, and it means that people have got to stop and wait and give way and all the rest of it. So, if these people then start, and I'd note the issue about dogs and prams and keeping all of those within the space, and I think that's a very good point, and I think that reinforces what I'm trying to get across. But I don't want this to become a situation where the operators of these establishments begin to take some form of ownership and they start to overstep the grace that this permission's been given in. And further to that, I think that clause should be removed, and if someone wants to make a special application, it's well within their rights to do so. But I think it encourages more so than mitigates a risk. The rest of the policy I don't see a problem with, and I do encourage the use of that space, and it does create an ambience. And for that simple matter, there's people who've been putting a rack of frocks out on the footpath for 35 years, and they should be allowed to do so. We're not here to bully people, but we just also want to make sure that the primary function of this access way is preserved, and then any spare capacity can then be utilised for this, this undertaking.
Thank you very much, Councillor Irvine. I now go to the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair.
Yes, Mayor, I saw that particular clause, as things like people putting up some stuff for weather protection. They go to a lot of places, especially tourist places, and they'll have awnings and so forth that's out on the footpath that are there permanently. They roll down see-through curtains and stuff like that, so if it's raining or it's windy or something, they can just fold them down. So, and I mean, you compare the foot traffic in Temora to somewhere in a tourist area, it's next to nothing. And people, they get used to it. They stroll down the street, and it's occasionally got to give way to somebody or something like that. Well, it's all. So I don't think we need to get too concerned about it. I'd like to see it stay there, because you just, you don't know what business owners are going to come up with, and the council's got the right to say no. So I prefer to see it stay there.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I must admit, though, that you'd acknowledge that, well, certainly I have received several complaints, I understand council have as well, bless you, that of people in, whether it's gophers or the trolleys, etc., that have had some issues in relation to going past certain businesses. So that is a genuine issue that obviously has got to be in our minds. So I go to Councillor Irvine.
And if I might just speak in response to the Deputy Mayor, there is a clause within this that states permanent structures, separate local council approval is needed to erect permanent structures in public space, including awnings that are not defined as temporary. So this policy doesn't cover approval for those type of things. So I acknowledge the type of structure that you're referring to, but they are covered under a DA and they're a separate application. We're talking about things such as heavy pot plants or heavy display equipment or heavy tables that will go out and be out on the footpath permanently. And they will, in my opinion, set up a situation where they can be thought of as permanent. And I don't believe that this policy should grant or should promote that type of stuff. I think that type of usage or that type of structure should be part of a DA and should be judged in that process. So.
Thanks very much, Councillor Irvine. I understood that those that do have the permanent, that they've got to have their public liability of $20 billion.
Oh,
Is that
yes,
correct?
of course, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Go to Councillor Judd.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I can see Councillor Irvine's concern, but also agree with the town planner. When we go back to late last year, and the state government was the one that come out, and when they were opening up after COVID-19, they were saying that all businesses have been doing it tough for 2 years, and we have to do what we can to try and encourage business and to get the economy moving again. And they were encouraging councils like us to try and have a bit of a flexibility and to try and get this outdoor dining policy going. So I sort of think we've got to try and be a bit encouraging to try and get it going tomorrow. I can imagine what some of the places more that really can make really go with this. So I'm hoping we can, people can make a real sense of this and make something of it.
Thank you, Councillor Judd. I mean, you're quite right. The state government, that is what they're wanting us to do, and I think council have been doing their best to try and comply with that to date. And I think just the main thing is that we've just got to remember that, as long as we're not blocking, which I think most seem to be, from what I understand, after recent events, that I think, they're all being very mindful and respectful of that from what I understand. Anyway, councillors, you have a report there, an important report and recommendation for you to consider on page 109, or is there an alternate? Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think we'll just put this out I'll move the recommendation, by the way.
Thank you.
Put it out and just see what feedback we get and address it when we get those submissions. I think that's probably the easiest way. There's no point in arguing the toss for it at the moment because it has to go on out for 28 days. So I'll move that recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Councillor Good, you're seconding.
I will second that, but I'd also like to make the comment that I note that recommendation doesn't include a recommendation for the employ the person to do the desktop review or shopping precinct inspection. I don't think that's necessary either. I think that it will go out on display, and I think council will point out to key stakeholders that it's available and it's on display. I think that should be sufficient.
Thanks very much, Councillor Good, and I actually fully endorse what you've said. I think let's remember that it's also gone to our LGNSW, our state association, for their advice as well, which is again part of the membership fee that we pay, so we're getting value there. And I think there was also another, who else, Madam Town Planner? Oh, Councillor Good.
Steve's legal advice.
No, thank you very much. It's, that is help. And again, that's $8,000 that, again, you've got a question, do we need to spend it? But again, the town planner's, she's just got it there as per the resolution, so she's done the right thing. Right, so moved and seconded. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare the motion carried. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Now, councillors, would you believe we go all the way over to page 129? Oh, thank you. We'll get the Director of Environmental Services back in the chamber. We go to page 129, 11.2, the Pollution Incident Response Management Plan, and the Engineering Services Manager.
Thanks, Mr Chairman. Oh, thanks, Mr Mayor. I guess it's a pretty basic report, but just happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr Manager. Welcome back, Mr Director of Environmental Services. During your temporary absence, Council resolved to adopt the recommendation in relation to the outdoor dining policy. Now, councillors, the Pollution Incident Response Management Plan, there is a draft report there. And Councillor Irvine.
Just to the engineer,
I just had a few little things.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's all right. Sorry, Councillor Irvine.
have we ever had an incident at the treatment works that would fit into this category?
The engineer.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Nah, particularly definitely not in my time at council. Yeah, there is potential because basically all of the sewer from town flows to the treatment plant via gravity, but then it's got to be pumped up about 2 metres into lagoons. So every millilitre of sewer that goes through the place has got to go through a pump station. So if that pump station was to fail, it would be catastrophic. But we've got things in place like there's 4 pumps there, all operate independent of each other, and there's a backup generator for power failure, and it gets regularly tested. And so, touch wood, we've never really had any major issue there. But no, there's certainly potential for there to be major pollution incidents. Potentially a major choke in the trunk main that goes out to the treatment plant, the treatment plant itself. The lagoons, if something happened to one of them, but touch wood, we haven't had any major dramas that we've had to report.
Thank you.
Just a further question.
Councillor Irvine.
How many meg a day lands out there? Is there an average, I suppose?
Yeah.
The engineer, question without notice.
No worries. Yeah, listen, I think on average it's about 800 kilolitres a day, so 0.8 of a meg.
Thank you. Councillor Irvine.
So on that basis, that temporary storage would give us close to over 20 days temporary storage.
So the engineer.
Yeah, that's correct. The only thing is we've got to pump it to, it's the same thing, we've got to pump it. So yeah, that pump station's the key. There is one other possible option it's not included here because it hasn't been verified, but there is potential that if that pump station was to overflow, the pump station failed and it was to get to the point it was going to overflow, we can potentially get it to gravity feed from that pump station to Pond 5, which is a long way down the treatment system, but it's better than onto the land, the Trungley Hall Road drain. That's something that we're looking at, but hasn't been formalised as yet.
Thank you very much. Councillors, you have the pollution incident response management plan there, and of course I've only just highlighted minor things like typos, etc.
Yeah.
But other than that,
Down one as well, but if you can show me that after.
yeah, thank you. Councillor Irvine.
Just want to refer, the French Street, it's a, how many of those remote pump, is that you say gravity, you said it gravity fed, but we have got some remote pump stations. They just lift it to accelerate the flow?
So the engineer.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So we've got 4 reticulation pump stations, so pump stations that are remote, and what they do is, say French Street, it wasn't possible to fall that back to the gravity system, so you fall it to a pump station, which then lifts it to the nearest gravity manhole, if you know what I mean. So the one at French Street, all of that area flows to the French Street pump station, and it lifts it from that pump station to a manhole that's adjacent to Joffrey Street, and then it enters back into the gravity system and runs to the treatment plant. Same, we've got 2 at the airport. They're the biggest haul. They pump about 1.8 k's back to near Trungley Road, and then we've got one in Britannia Street, which captures sewer down to near the honey factory down on Oak Street, and then lifts it back up the hill and drops it in near Nottingham Road or Sherwood Road there somewhere.
Thank you very much. Councillors, there's a recommendation, page 129, for you to consider, that being the council endorse the 2022 update of the pollution incident response management plan, or is there an alternate recommendation for council to consider? The Deputy Mayor.
I'll move the recommendation from page 129.
Thank you. The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, has moved that way, seconded Councillor Bushell. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? And the typos are there.
I think one you're wrong.
Oh, really? I should have turned my microphone off for that. So if there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much indeed. Councillors, let's now proceed over to page 150. 11.3, the netball park, I beg your pardon, Nixon Park netball facility upgrade. And of course, Council heard from the delegation led by Mrs McCauley this afternoon. I go to the Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, just a thought, just clarification. One of the people is a sister-in-law. I don't know whether I should be declaring a non-pecuniary.
Well, you're declaring a non-pecuniary.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr Deputy Mayor, has declared a non-pecuniary interest. The Treasurer of the Australian Football Club, Mrs Grant, is the sister-in-law of the Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Councillors, yes, you've heard from the delegation in relation to their plight. Obviously, the engineer indicated whilst compiling the report that the budget implications should have read up to 75.
I'm happy to explain that.
Right, the engineer.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. So basically, I guess to provide a bit further explanation there, at the time that this report had to be submitted for the council reports, the club hadn't come up with the amount that they wished to loan, and at that particular time I was of the view it was probably the maximum they would loan would be up to 50,000. So that's why I've put that there, which would have meant if council loaned them 50,000, there would still be a $25,000 funding shortfall for the project. And they've since come and basically have obviously said that they're keen or happy to loan the 75,000. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And just further to that, I was talking to the Treasurer, Mrs Grant, the other day, and they indicated that if council were of a mind to loan them some funds, that she thought a 10-year period, which is consistent, I think, Madam Director of Admin and Finance, is consistent with other organisations. The Director?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. So we lent the schoolboys rugby league 50,000 over 10 years when they built the new facility at Bob Aldridge Park. And that's since been fully repaid. A couple of other organisations, the golf club, we lent 12,000 to them over 10 years. Fair few have been lent funds over 5 years, varying terms, but up to 10 years.
And interest-free, Madam Director?
Yes, that's correct.
Right, thank you. Councillors, that's up to you. Obviously, they've put a lot of work into the in-kind contributions, which is pleasing. I have to say I am very frustrated with governing bodies of any kind, in this case the AFL Riverina, that pointing out what has to be upgraded but are not offering to contribute financially in relation to this particular project. Acknowledge that they've contributed in other projects, but it's just a little frustrating as far as I'm concerned. I go now to Councillor Irvine.
I'd like council to consider this pretty favourably. I think at the absolute worst, they're going to pay off a significant portion of this debt if they were to fall over at some unexpected juncture. Council retain the asset. There's really no loss that I can see other than the fact that, yes, we'd have the transfer of a facility that we may not have use for at the time, although I'm sure that amount of infrastructure will only go up in value. And they're going to pay the full amount back. It's not a gift, it's not a donation, it's not a grant. And it brought to mind a newspaper article I came across not that long ago in relation to the Temora Recreation Centre. And the fact when they wound up the committee, they were 50 grand or something to that effect, short of funds. But we've still got the rec centre and it's been a smash hit. So that's my thoughts on it. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't. They're a solid club. They've been there for a long time. They've got the runs on the board. I don't expect that they would default on this.
Thanks very much, Councillor Irvine. I now go to Councillor Mclaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The grant funds that this council's received over the last 5 years have really enabled some fantastic infrastructure to be provided. Some of the bigger projects we've managed to make those grant funds go a lot further through partnerships. I'm particularly thinking of the Nixon Park Clubhouse, where council, grant funds and local clubs and sporting administrative bodies have all chipped in to make those grant funds go further. The soccer clubhouse is another case in point where grant funds were added to by the club and then council chipped in. So I think we've got an opportunity to achieve something that we just couldn't possibly do as a council on our own. It would never happen. So I'm fully in support of this. I think if they go down the path of bituming the court, I think that'll be a waste of this significant amount of grant funds, because that's going forward, that will be a substandard surface and may well be obsolete in 5 years and we won't be able to use it. So I think it would be a folly to invest in an old surface that isn't going to be at standards. I know across the Riverina, most netball venues that they visit on their circuit have 2 cement courts, from Collyamberley to Coolman to Wagga and all around. So we're one of the last ones to upgrade our courts. The senior courts needed upgraded for as long as my kids played netball there, and it had huge cracks in it. So I think removing the trees has been a great thing to start with, to take away that root damage. If once they're gone, if you put down a cement slab, that will be a 50-year base that will have maintenance every 15 years just for the surface. And netball is our biggest women's sport in this country. Once you have a court in place, there is no maintenance between resurfacing. There's no irrigation, mowing, top dressing, nothing. So it's a very low maintenance sporting facility that hundreds of girls in our shire use, and people from other centres come to. I'm a bit disappointed and upset that we've had complaints about the standard of our courts through the codes. I didn't realise that. So it's obviously quite important to get done, and I'd be fully supportive. And I would be quite supportive if council met them halfway. I think 75,000 loan plus 50,000 in kind. Some of those people are giving up pecuniary value in their own personal businesses to get this project up. That's the passion and need that they see. So I know we did help the soccer clubhouse get across the line a few years ago, and I think it would be only fair for council to chip in some way to reduce that long-term loan burden, given the enormous in-kind contribution that they're making as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mclaren. Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Our town has a lot of committees and a lot of organisations, and I fully support these committees that are willing to get out and do their own work and raise their own money and put money in themselves. I think it's a good thing to support. I just had a question to the Director for Administration and Finance. How do we, if we were to lend the money, how do we finance that?
Thank you, Councillor Good. The Director of Administration and Finance.
Through you, Mr Mayor, it would just be from our reserves. We would just advance it out of our reserves and then repay that over time. Yep.
Thanks very much. Go to Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I really don't have a problem loaning these people the money, and I'm sure they've got capacity to pay it back. The only thing that does worry me, from a ratepayer's point of view, is interest rates are potentially on the rise from here on in over the next 10 years. There will be a budget implication because of that loss of income for us. The only thing I'd like to see is if they had the capacity to pay that back sooner than the agreed time period, I'd be more in favour of loaning the money. But
yeah, thank you, Councillor Oliver. And just on that, in further discussions with the Treasurer of the football club, Mrs Grant, the other day, that was their strong hope, I suppose, but also intention that because, as you can see and you've heard, that they've been very proactive in trying to obtain those sponsors as well, and that's, I think, impressive that they have been putting a lot of work in in that space. So they believe that they were hopeful of receiving some of those sponsorship funds, and that was their intention to pay that off straight away. So that was the view for Council's information. Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Go to Councillor Judd.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I support helping the netball club. As someone who's lived across the road from the Erie Park Recreation Ground, I've seen the ground being used many years ago just for football and junior football, and it's been encouraging and amazing to see the growth in girls' sport. And when you reach the stage today, well, I guarantee that there's more girls playing over the road than boys now. At Erie Park, we were able to, a few years ago, to combine with the tennis club and construct these 2 hard courts with a concrete base. So Erie Park's got a good setup, and I'd like to see tomorrow now come into the same league as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Judd. You skite. No, thank you very much, Councillor Judd. Councillors, from what I hear, look, we have a netball umpire here in Councillor Bushell, and I think she was on the executive of the Farrer League board as well. Councillor Bushell, do you have any comments that you'd like to make in relation to the report, Nixon Park Netball Facility Upgrade?
I honestly was going to keep my comments to myself until I heard anyone be negative, but I don't think anyone's been negative. Everyone's been supportive towards it, so I was really going to be for the netballers. So everyone's here, so I feel like the motion will be something positive. But yeah, it's as a member of the AFL board many years ago, the Temora Court has been receiving many complaints for a long time. So it's sad to see that we're one of the last. But as you can see, as what Councillor Mclaren said, we have worked on other areas in our town. So let's work on netball.
Good on you. Thanks very much, Councillor Bushell. Well, councillors, you've heard from the Director of Administration and Finance in relation to where, if council wished to give them the club a loan, where they would come from. And they were, I think, asking that 10-year period from the discussion with the Treasurer. So do I have a motion, councillors? Councillor Bushell?
Yeah, I'd like to see that their loan be the maximum of 50,000, and that council contribute the remaining from whatever funds that we can find, if possible. I know that we had budget workshops and we were running it quite thin, but I think possibly with all those projects that were mentioned, there was some comments about that sometimes they won't go to the maximum capacity. So I think if we can, let's nominate that funds to our budget.
Thank you, Councillor Bushell. So you're moving that council loan the clubs $50,000 for a 10-year period of interest-free, and further that a $25,000 grant.
$25,082, yes.
Okay, so you're moving that way. Thank you. Is there a second of Councillor Mclaren? Thank you. Second the motion. Discussion. Councillor Mclaren?
I'd just like to remind council that we did help the soccer club get their clubhouse on the runs on the board a few years ago, and
well,
that's all I'll say.
Thanks, Councillor Mclaren. What I will say is that it has always been my understanding during these projects that were funded that if they go over in terms of the allocated funds through the Stronger Country Communities, the local roads, community infrastructure, whatever the fund was, that they have to foot the bill. I for one would not support the motion that's currently before us. I don't think it is fair to other organisations that have gone before us. A lot of them, I'm sure, would have loved an upgrade further than what they've been allocated. And again, I remind Council of the budget situation that Temora Shire Council is in. Now I've said my piece. Is there any more discussion on the motion, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'm sort of thinking the same lines. It's all very well if council's got the money there to put towards it, but the way I see it, we sort of don't. I'd be interested to get the director's finance thoughts on that, but yes, if it's going to make our budget look a bit worse or less, he's got a little stash away somewhere that we can pull this out of. I'd like to hear the director's thoughts.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I'll go to the Director of Environmental, the Director of Demotion, Director of Administration.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As everyone knows, the budget is pretty tight, and I think after the workshop the other day, we're looking at about a $75,000 surplus, I believe it is. You know, I think it's fabulous that the netball and football clubs are prepared to put in as much money as they are, and they have offered to take the loan out for $75,000. Yeah, I'll probably just leave it at that.
Yeah.
So,
Thanks, Madam Director, and you are quite right. That's exactly what they did. Often the Treasurer did indicate that to me as well last week, that they weren't asking for us for $1 more, and that, I have to say, impressed me very much in the work that's gone in. Thank you. I go to Councillor Irvine.
Yeah, and just on that, I have to agree that you put your hand out, you get your stuff organised, you get granted what you get granted, and coming back and asking for additional grant money, I don't think, from whatever organisation, should be encouraged or, you know, entertained. I think the fact that we could offer them in this current environment when they are anticipating increases in interest rates to extend a loan of that scale, interest-free for 10 years, is a generous offer on council's part, and it gets the project over the line. It allows them to complete an important project for them. It's obviously that they're fairly well committed with others, but I just don't see how we can have one round of funding where they get allocated funding to a certain level and then come back. I don't agree with the granting of the 25,000. I'd just say the loan of 75 is a very fair outcome for the club as it exists.
Thanks very much, Councillor Irvine. I go to the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair.
Yes, Mayor, there's always the opportunity down the track for Fisher Council if it, you know, get some more, another round of funding or something, and to allocate some money towards it anyway. It doesn't mean to say that, you know, at 5 years' time we're flush with money and looking for somewhere to spend it.
We can dream.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Thanks, Mr Deputy Mayor. Well, councillors, you have a motion before you that Councillor Bushell and Councillor Mclaren have moved that council endorses the project and loan the Timor Australian Football Club an interest-free loan of $50,000 to be repaid over a maximum of 10 years, and further that council grant or allocate a grant of $25,082. Is there an amendment, or if not, of the Deputy Mayor?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd like to move the amendment that council loan the netball club or Aussie Wheels club the full sum of $75,082.
Over the 10 years interest-free?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Oliver, seconding the motion? Thank you. Moved and seconded. The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair and Councillor Oliver moved the amendment that council loan the Timor Australian Football Club $75,082 over 10 years interest-free. Now, is there any more discussion? If not, I'm going to put the amendment first, which is that council allocate the loan of $75,000 over 10 years interest-free. So all those of that opinion of the amendment, please raise your hands. To the contrary, I declare the amendment carried. The amendment now becomes the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare the motion carried. Well done, Councillor Bush and Councillor Mclaren. You're standing up. I know, we all know where the hearts are, and that's all that matters in my book. your netball skirts. No, well done. Thank you. And I know that the Australian Football Club will be tickled pink with whatever support council are allocating. Now, nothing of an urgent late nature from the engineering department, please.
No, Mr Mayor. No, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Engineer. Let's go to page 157, the Department of Environmental Services report, 12.1, a planning proposal. The Director.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Pretty straightforward, just reporting on the notification period of the proposed LEP amendment. There were no submissions received, so the recommendation is that the plan be made and the process continue.
Thanks, Mr Director. Councillors, you have the report and recommendation there for you to consider. Is there an alternate recommendation, or someone like to move the recommendation that appears on 159? Councillor Judd, you're moving the recommendation. Thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Oliver. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare the motion carried. Thank you. Did we have to raise our... Oh, sorry. All those of that opinion, can you please raise your hands? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Well done. Now, let's go over to page 160. It's been early Christmas, isn't it? 12.2, the Temora Swimming Club, the Director.
Along the same veins as what's been previously discussed, the Swimming Club are taking this opportunity to get their wish list completed. They're two organisations that are looking for an interest-free loan. The list of items they'd like to achieve are on page 162, and they're looking for a loan of up to $20,000 over a 5-year period.
Thank you, Mr Director. They're goers, these clubs, aren't they? The voluntary groups, and they're keen to at least work hard to say to council, look, if you are prepared to loan us, we'll work hard to repay that and meet that commitment. So, councillors, it's over to you. I go to Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Similar sort of statement that I made for the netball. They're a club that really are putting their money where their mouth is. They're putting up a third of the money up front. It's a good time to do it while the pool's getting upgraded. So I'll move that we lend them the $20,000 over a period of 5 years, interest free.
Thank you, Councillor Good. You've moved that way. Seconded, Councillor Bushell. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? There's no further discussion. I beg your pardon. Sorry, Councillor Irvine, yes.
The only the comment I'll make on this is if there's only so many clubs in town, and by the time they're all into us for an interest-free loan, that'll be the end of that. And they won't be back. I don't imagine that 2 loans will be issued to the same club. So, yeah, I think there'll be a limit to how much of this goes on.
Yes. Hope you're right, Councillor Irvine. Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think I do agree with Councillor Irvine's comments there that interest-free, particularly with going forward with interest rates on the rise, I don't know that the ratepayers can afford to give interest-free. I think there should be some sort of an interest attached to it, just to make it fair income, I think. So anyway, that's all I've got to say. So thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Oliver. And again, this is what it's all about. We're discussing a motion that's before us, and I know my head's saying one thing and the heart says another, like all of us, I'd say, in this chamber. But again, we've all got to be mindful of the budget bottom line. So, discussion on the motion before us, which is the recommendation that appears on page 160. There's no further discussion. There's no further discussion. I will... oh no, sorry, Councillor Mclaren, you're right. I'll put the motion to you then. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. I declare the motion carried. But I do think, Councillor Irvine and Councillor Oliver, that we do need to flag going forward, Madam Director, that that's something that Council really should be considering at least seriously debating the interest going forward. The Deputy Mayor.
Yes, I mean, I guess the other side of that is that these organisations are paying for something that council could have actually had to pay for themselves. So, in a way, that is our interest. We get interest back, or the community certainly is getting interest back anyway.
Very good point, Mr Deputy Mayor. A very good point. Anyway, we'll have that debate at another day. Councillor Bushell?
Just on the note with the loans and whatnot that we have in our system, maybe we could receive an update just to know where we're at.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bushell. I'll go to the Director of Administration Finance.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. So we have no outstanding loans at the moment. They've all been fully repaid. I think the most recent ones were the TEM-FM relocation.
Schoolboys.
No, Schoolboys has been paid for a little while.
Oh, good.
Perhaps the golf club, they purchased a mower a couple of years ago. Yeah, they were the last two, but they've been
Unbelievable.
fully repaid in the last financial year. Yep.
Unbelievable. Thank you, Madam Director. Are you happy, Councillor Bushell? Thank you. Councillors, there's nothing of an urgent late nature from the Director of Environmental Services?
Of course not.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Councillors, let's now proceed to page 163. The Administration Finance Department report, 13.1, additional special rate variation. Very important report. The Director.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this is following a report that went to last council meeting. IPART and the Office of Local Government came up with a solution to the 0.7 rate peg, and that was to ask us to put an application in to get an extra 1.3 to bring us up to the 2% that we forecast this time last year. So the resolution is what's required from the circular in order to qualify for the special variation. So we needed to state that council had considered the impact on ratepayers and that was considered reasonable. We needed to state what the additional funds would be used for, and we also needed to state, exactly how much we were applying for and the dollar value that equated to. So that's outlined in the recommendation there.
Thank you, Madam Director. Councillors, a crucial, I know we discussed this issue last meeting. This is the formal resolution that we are compelled to put before council if we wish to apply, and of course the view is of the minister and the state body who's been meeting with OLG, IPART, etc. That will be complied with. We did, I think the General Manager and I, we took it up with the State Association, Country Mayors and Steph Cook MP, that the whisper about how reserves were going to be taken into account, and of course that's for this particular additional special rate variation, it will not be taken into account, was the advice we were given. So anyway, councillors, page 164 has a recommendation there for you to consider, or is there an alternate? Councillor Bushell.
I'd like to move the recommendation, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bushell has moved the recommendation. Seconder. Sorry, I didn't see you. Seconder, Councillor. You seconded, Councillor Oliver?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Okay.
One could say our reserves have been knocked about a little bit already, so over the last 2 months.
Yes.
But anyway, thank you, Mr Mayor.
No, thanks. Sorry, Councillor Oliver, I didn't see you earlier. Moved and seconded. If there's any further discussion, Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm, as a councillor, and I'm no doubt all the other councillors here are concerned about the increase in rates for our ratepayers. It has been a particularly hard time over the last few years, particularly for some businesses where they've had to close for an extended period of time. And with inflation going up, there seems to be more and more amounts going, or people having to pay more and more amounts. But that being said, the point, I take notice of the 0.7% rate pegging that we received. wasn't enough to cover our increased superannuation in payments that we have to make because of the superannuation going up. We've got a particularly good council, and I think part of that is that we have got, we do look after our money well, and the town and an area park and the Shire looks very good because of the way we look after it. And if the director thinks that we need this, then I'd support it.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Good. And it is appropriate that you do acknowledge that. Yes, it has been a hard time for many. However, as you've essentially acknowledged, that if we didn't take this up, I think we'd be irresponsible, in my personal view, fiscally speaking. Councillor Irvine.
Yeah, and on that note, I think they released the inflation rates in New Zealand recently, last day or so. It doesn't relate to us directly, but it's 6.9% for first quarter. So technically, if we get a rate increase of 2%, our costs go up 6.9%. We're going to be behind by about 5% in terms of just keeping up with our fixed costs. We'd expect that we're going to be up for increased fuel costs. We've already had some costs come through from some suppliers.
And freight has gone up to Billio.
Yeah. So it'd be the thing I will note, and it's we're only going to catch this up. It's a bit like daylight saving. You get it back at the end. They adjust my understanding is that they adjust the rate peg based on inflation, but it's done at a 12-month lag.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Councillor Irvine. I give the Director, Administration Finance a call.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, that's correct. So it's a 12-month lag, but then by the time you implement it, it's up to 2 years before you actually get the benefits of that rate peg. And sorry, I'll just say too, I believe acknowledging the difficulties that people have had over the last couple of years, I recall when we had the drought, there was discussion about not taking up the rate peg at that time, but council has to remember that if we forego that additional income, that's removed from your rate base forever, so that you can't
You ever catch up?
you never catch that up again.
No.
So, yeah.
No, thanks very much, Madam Director. I go to the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair.
Mayor, and I think to keep in mind too is that, if we got what we thought we were going to get, the committee would have been paying this amount anyway.
That's
so
true.
At the end of the day, I don't think it really is an extra amount that the business, the people have got to pay. I think it's, what anyone who put any thought into it would have
Budgeted,
thought they would have had to pay budgeted for it.
No, that's a good point. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Well, councillors, you have a motion before you that Councillor Bushell and Councillor Oliver have moved and seconded on page 164. A very important one. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried unanimously. And thank you very, very much. And I'm sure you'll advise about that in the morning. Thank you. Let's go over to page 165, 13.2, records for destruction. The Director.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Reports as written. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor, the report's there for you to consider, and there's a recommendation, page 165, also for you to consider. Councillor Bushell.
I'd like to move the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Bushell has moved the recommendation. Councillor Oliver has seconded the motion. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Over to page 167, 13.3, payment of fees and expenses. The Director.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the policy's been on display now. No submissions have been received, so we just want to adopt that policy.
Thank you. Councillors, you have a recommendation there for you to consider on page 167, or is there an alternate? Councillor Good.
I'll move that way, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Good's moved the recommendation. The Deputy Mayor.
I'll second that one.
Thank you. Councillor Sinclair has seconded the motion. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. I declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, let's now proceed over to page 168, 13.4, Service New South Wales operating hours. The Director.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The report's as written. I will just note that inadvertently our communications officer has already started advertising this, that the Service New South Wales would open from the 2nd of May. So hopefully this resolution goes through today. Sorry about that. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much. And before I go to Councillor Good, Council, we do want to thank the Director for teasing that out. Obviously, Council were keen to see how we can probably improve availability to particularly the rural sector of our Shire community, amongst others, and coming up with what's before us seems to be a great compromise, particularly when it doesn't cost us anymore. Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's good that we are extending the hours because it does seem a very popular service. My question is, though, to the Director, is Service New South Wales generally open at 8:30? The reason for my question is that I quite often see our staff ringing Service New South Wales for advice or various things. Is that going to be available at 8:30 in the morning?
Thank you. The Director.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, so Parks is our service centre, I suppose, customer support centre, and they open at 8:30. So we can't actually open the RMS any earlier than that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I'll move that way then.
Thank you. So Councillor Good, you're moving the recommendation on page 168. Thank you. Councillor Bushell has seconded the motion. Is there further discussion on the motion? If not, I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. I just would ask the Director that I'm assuming that promoted through all appropriate channels would include obviously a local paper, the website, Facebook, Narrabri News, community radio, etc.
You are correct.
Good, thank you. I'll tick that right off. Thank you. Is there anything of a urgent, late nature from the Director, please?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
No, thanks very much. And thanks again. I know that the councillors have mentioned to me various times since budget workshops. We do want to thank you particularly and your team for the work that's gone in thus far to the budget. We know you've been under the pump in a significant way, but council are very, very grateful for your extra commitment given. Let's go to page 169, correspondence, 14.1, Area Park Community Projects. The General Manager, or Councillor Judd. Sorry, can you? Councillor Judd.
I'll declare a non-pecuniary interest.
Thanks very much. Councillor Judd has declared a non-pecuniary interest on this matter, 14.1. The General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, it's been council practice for quite a few years now to have or to donate $1,000 to Area Park to improve their Christmas decorations on an incremental basis, and they've requested that same consideration be given this year. A couple of things. Firstly, ignore the total donations because it's a financial year, so that will actually reset on the 1st of July. And the other thing is that, of course, in the letter it says 2021 Christmas street decoration, but it's actually 22.
So, thanks, Mr General Manager. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question to the Director of Finance, if I may. I know the General Manager said ignore the $12,000 figure. What is our donation budget again, please? I'll just remind me.
Thank you. The Director of Administration and Finance.
Through you, Mr Mayor, it was $15,000. We cut $5,000 out of our normal 20 for budget purposes.
So we've done pretty well, haven't we, as far as if you're looking at nearly the end of the financial year and sort of 12 expended, it's not too bad.
Yeah, that's right. So we've only got 3 more months to go, or 2.5. So it's not looking too bad.
Thank you. Who's on? You, Councillor Judd.
Yeah, I just question the General Manager. I actually thought the $1,000 was in the budget, from the present budget. So,
thank you. I think that does ring a bell, Councillor Judd. As a separate line item.
There is a $1,000 line item for the Area Park Christmas tree, and then there's also an allocation for the Temora Teabag Street Fair as well, the Christmas fair.
Okay,
So
okay,
is this the Christmas tree but, or is this a separate request?
so councillor Judd, this, from what we're saying, is Christmas street decorations as opposed to the Christmas tree function. Councillor Judd.
As far as I know, I think there should be, I think there's $1,000 for both, either, for both of them, like for a total of $2,000, but I might be wrong, but that's what I've been presuming, so.
Thank you. Thanks, councillor Judd. I didn't think that we gave 1,000 every year for decorations, but yeah, the Director of Finance Administration.
For donations? For decoration?
Can someone, who's going to speak? The General Manager?
Yes, Mayor. We have in the past given $1,000 for street decorations. I think last year it didn't occur from memory, but we certainly have in the past given $1,000 towards. And Temora also does street decorations, and this is where it came from. There was an agreement, or not an agreement, a decision made at the time that Area Park be given $1,000 as well to upgrade their street decorations at the time.
Yeah, I thought that was a one-off, I must admit. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the advice of the General Manager. So therefore, if council wanted to do something, this would have to come out of the new financial year's community events budget allocation. General Manager?
Well, that would depend when the donation is made. If it was made now, to come out of this year, which there is some wriggle room within this year, or it can come out of next year's.
Yeah, not going to have much left when we go through the business paper. Councillors, what's your wish? Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can we give half now and half in the next financial year, because it's bloody Christmas time, it's still 7 or 8 months away.
Thanks, Councillor Oliver. Councillor Judd, can you, was your reflection, I still have it in my head, the more I'm trying to go back, I thought this was a one-off at that time, and then they're going to come back when these decorations didn't, wore out or whatever. That was my honest reflection. But Councillor Judd, what's your reflections, please?
My reflection, it was $1,000 for the next ensuing few years, and unfortunately that's what I've told the community, that we had $1,000 coming, and that's why this had virtually been spent last Christmas. And I said, well, you better. And the treasurer said, well, we haven't got the money. And I said, well, you better put a letter in and apply for it, so.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Judd. So, therefore, the General Manager, we need to sort this out.
So we're talking about payment in retrospect for payments that have already been made, not for the next year. Okay.
Aha, so it is 2021.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. We've eventually teased it out. So thank you for that. So, councillors, I'm in your hands. Councillor Irvine.
Yeah, I'll just move a motion that we pay it.
Righto. Thank you. Councillor Irvine's moving that we contribute $1,000 in retrospect to the 2021 Christmas street decorations. Is there a seconder for the motion, please? The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, has seconded that. Is there further discussion? If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare the motion carried. Thank you very, very much. Councillors, let's go to page 171, 14.2, Tea Light event at Lake Centenary. I just declare a non-pecuniary interest as a patron financial member of TBEG. And I defer to...
I'll declare a pecuniary interest as a executive member of TBEG.
Thank you. The Director of Environmental Services declared a pecuniary interest as a member of the executive. And Councillor Good.
I declare a non-pecuniary interest as a member of TBEG.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Good. It's noted his interest. Councillor Judd.
Non-pecuniary interest as patron.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Judd. Now, after all those declarations, let's go to the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This one definitely is 2022. This is actually an interesting one. If I could possibly impose on the press not to report what I'm just about to say, but with these events that are coming up toward the end of the year, these would be ideally suited to the events budget or the events grant that we're going to have. And so what I suggest possibly is that the figures that are quoted there, we actually give permission for the event to go ahead and the use of the facilities, but the application be made to cover the cost of those out of the upcoming grant.
Thank you. So, councillors, in relation to the Teabag Tea Light event, so the motion, Mr General Manager, that you'd be seeking or you're recommending is that that council support the event, accede to the request, and further that it be funded via the events, New South Wales Government's Community Events Grant Program. General Manager?
Maybe just advise the organisers of that the grant program is available, because, yeah.
Right. Well, that's helpful. Let's go to Councillor Good.
I would move that way, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so have we captured that? Because I'm not sure whether I've even understand. Thank you. Hmm?
Page 60, the report that went to assets.
Okay. So we have Councillor Good has moved the motion that's appearing on the screen, that resolve that council support the event and advise the event organisers that funding is available, or should it be potentially available?
Maybe available.
May be available under Reconnecting Regional New South Wales Community Events Program. So Councillor Good, are you happy with that motion?
Aye, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor Good.
Aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks very much. Second for the motion.
I just wanted to know
Hang on, I need a second for the motion before we can debate it. Councillor Irvine, you're seconding the motion, thank you. I now go to Councillor Bushell.
do we need to include consultation with the Lake Centenary Management Committee for the event, or?
Yeah, well is that what the Deputy Mayor? Yeah, okay, thank you, good point. As a mover and seconder, happy to include that and further that appropriate consultation happen with the Lake Centenary Management Committee.
Yes, I am, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor.
Good, Councillor Irvine, happy, thank you. Moved and seconded, is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to you, although those of that opinion please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. I'm assuming that the Director of Environmental Services is vacating the next one, and to carry over the interests that have already been stated from Councillor Judd, Councillor Good and myself. So we go to 14.3, Teabag voting delegate, the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, as you're aware, Teabag is no longer a section or community committee of council. However, they have council a strong supporter of them financially and in kind, and they have asked that or invited council to nominate a councillor to be a voting delegate on Teabag. So for council's consideration and also the election of a delegate.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. Councillors, I think we've had, I know I've been on it over the years as a past president, Councillor Judd's been a president, Councillor Reinhold, I think, is she the current council delegate? Councillor Reinhold, and I think others over the years. So let's go to Councillor Bushell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to know how often they meet.
Thank you. I understand we used to meet monthly when I was there. That's a few years ago now, but I'm not sure. The General Manager, are you aware? Yeah, it used to be monthly, Councillor Bushell, back in 2012-ish. But so I think if you'd assume that it would be, executive would meet every month. Thank you. So, councillors, Councillor Mclaren.
Can I nominate Councillor Reinhold in her absence?
You may. What a nice thing to do.
And in the alternative, well, unless she doesn't want to.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's funny, I've never been a big fan of all alternate delegates, but anyway, that's obviously if council want to do that, then that's great, and we do it for many things. So, Councillor Mclaren has nominated Councillor Reinhold as a council delegate on TBEG. Is there a seconder for the motion, please? Thank you, Councillor Good. Moved and seconded that we do take up the position of or a seat on the Executive Committee of TBEG, and that Councillor Reinhold fill that position. So Councillor Mclaren has moved that way. Councillor Good has seconded the motion. Is there further discussion? Councillor Mclaren, further discussion?
Can we just add on to the end of that, subject to her assenting or something
Subject
like that?
to her approval, yes.
Be nice if we asked her.
You've given her a word. Okay. And look, Councillor Reinhold, if this motion is passed, Councillor Reinhold can, if her commitments are too significant, we can always appoint another delegate. If there's no further discussion, I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Let's go over to page 175. The Director of Environmental Services invited back to the chamber. I'm assuming he's still with us, is he?
Yes.
Oh, good, he is. Thank you, Mr. Director. During your temporary absence, Council have, in relation to 14.2, the tea light event at Lake Centenary has referred it to state government grant program that it may be eligible for, and 14.3, the TBEG voting delegate, subject to her approval, Councillor Reinhold has been nominated to take up that seat. Thank you. Let's go to 175, 14.4, the Area Park Senior Housing waiving of fees. The General Manager. Thank you. Councillor Judd has declared pecuniary interest as he's the chairman of the board out there. Let's go to the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's the issue is as read. There's work undertaken in front of the side of the Peppers, which there's a requirement for a contribution towards that under the Roads Act. That contribution is $2,653.75, and the Area Park Rural Senior Housing Committee is requesting council waive those fees.
Should be donated back is the terminology, that former Councillor Smith used to remind us of. Councillors, what's your wish there? I just wondered, precedent, I think the Director of Administration Finance mentioned that in several conversations that we've had recently, but the precedent. Do we have any precedent in terms of, we've helped, Dr. Parry or others, the Director?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the engineer might be able to explain the agreement that we came to with Dr. Parry Homes down at Shipton Villas.
Okay, thank you. The Engineering Services Manager.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Probably slightly different because the Shipton Villas was classed as a development, in which case they were responsible for the full cost of the footpath out the front of the Shipton Villas. They wrote to council and requested council consider contributing towards the footpath, of which at that time council asked them to contribute 5,000. Council paid the rest, which the 5,000 equated to what would be the footpath contribution, which is about 50% of the cost. So it ended up a bit of a 50-50 deal. In relation to this particular request, I guess the only other thing I would note is that it's the side of their block, not the frontage, and as such, the contribution is 25% of the total cost. So if it was at the front of the property or at the front of anybody's property, it'd be double that. Being at the side of the property, as it would be for anybody else, it's 25% of the total cost. Yeah, it's definitely in the Local Government Act. I don't know that it's mandated. I think council's got the ability to charge up to 50%, and council has made a decision somewhere along the line to reduce that cost for side frontage down to 25%. Is that the way you?
Thank you. The Director of Administration Finance, did you have a comment? No. Thank you. Councillor Irvine.
Just a question to the engineer. Is this an upgrade, or was there ever a gutter there, or has this just been part of the road upgrade?
The engineer.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So council's only got the ability to charge this fee when it's an upgrade. So there was no curb there. This is down Area Street, down the side of their property. And now, council, not through them, we've decided to put curb there, and we've got the right to levy that charge because it's an upgrade.
Thank you. Councillor Bushell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the process, isn't in our policy that says that you can have a payment scheme? What's the level that would, if we don't do it as a donation, what's the level? Is it like 5, 10 years at a certain percentage, or what?
Good question, Councillor Bushell. Thank you. The Director of Admin and Finance.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So for footpath and curb and gutter contributions, it's classified as a charge against the land. So then on transfer, that those funds are recoupable.
We also can do payment plan now.
They can do a payment plan as well. Yes, that's right.
Yes, as agreed and worked out with the relevant parties and the Director and General Manager. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. And there's no interest on those outstanding amounts.
Thank you. Further, Councillor Bushell.
Sorry, and thank you for that information, Director. I just wanted to know what would the minimum be that we've ever done before? Thank
you. The Director, question without notice, Director.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is no minimum. It's whatever they can afford. Yeah.
Thank you. The General Manager, do you have anything to add?
Only to say that this is very different to anything we've dealt with before. There's no precedent, but what we have here is a block of land that's actually essentially owned by three people. Council owns 9%. Can't remember the other two, but Department of Housing own part of it, or housing and whatever, and the Area Park Community own part of it. If it was a state government owned body, they're not able to be legally charged for the works because they're exempt under the Act. So it's one of those quite different things insofar as if it was, as I said, entirely owned by the state government, we wouldn't be charging them. We'd be asking them, but they don't have to pay. If it was council would pay it, and then a community group in the past they have paid it. So it's quite a different sort of situation to what we normally deal with.
Thanks, Mr. General Manager. Councillor Irvine.
Yeah, I'd just like to move a motion that council donate back the costs related to the curb and gutter upgrade for the Area Park Marural Senior Housing Committee.
So you're moving that we accede to the request?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Good. you seconded the motion. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion or amendment? Councillor Mclaren.
Just to comment on the Area Park Senior Housing Committee, the wonderful work they do volunteer-wise, and they're a charity, so I'm very sympathetic to their organisation.
Thank you, Councillor Mclaren. Councillor Bushell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just through the Director. So with our donations budget from the previous report, we're at 13,000. So this makes it over the 15,000 that was allocated. Correct?
If the motion was passed.
If the motion was passed, thank you.
Councillor Mclaren, thank you, Councillor Bushell. The Director of Administration Finance.
That's correct.
Okay, councillors, you have a motion before you. If there's no amendment, well, I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. I have a show of hands. All those of that opinion, please raise your hands. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Now, is Councillor Judd coming back in? Thanks, Councillor. Is Mary Gilmore is publicity officer, but it's a committee of council, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, of course it is, yeah.
Yeah. Didn't get the chop.
Did I wish? You got the old technicality.
I'll have to find
It
something.
can be done both ways. But
Oh, right. Thank you, Councillor Judd. During your temporary absence, Council have considered the report 4.4, senior housing waiving of fees. Council have resolved to donate those fees back to that organisation, totalling $2,653.75.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillors, over to page 177, 14.5, Area Park Mary Gilmore Festival, the General Manager. Non-pecuniary interest, Councillor Judd, thank you. I beg your pardon. Sorry, I didn't. Sorry. So the General Manager, 14.5, Mary Gilmore.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As written, councillors, this is a request, the annual request for the Mary Gilmore Festival, which, as was pointed out, is a committee of council. There is in our IPR documents, it is an event we do support. I would suggest, if councillors of the mind, for a similar resolution to the previous one, where it can again be referred to the whatever the name of that program was.
The Reignite, or was it? Reconnect, thank you. Councillor Good.
Yes, yeah, I was going to move that we, the motion similar to the one we did for 14.2.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Good. Councillor Bushell, you've seconded that. Moved, seconded. Further discussion? If not, I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, we do have an urgent late item of correspondence that you should all receive in your loose leaf pages. Correspondence 14.6, the Temora Rotary Club Men's Health Van, the General Manager.
Have I taken over?
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As written, there's a request to place the van in Paleface Park for a period between the 6th and 7th of May.
Thank you. So the mover and seconder happen to be Councillor Good and Councillor Bushell. Thank you. Non-pecuniary interest, Councillor Judd is declared as a past president of Rotary. Further interest? No. Thank you. Discussion on the correspondence. Councillor Bushell.
Just wanted to know whether the van had a generator on it or whether it's non-required. I know that the blood bank van was requested to remove from this area down into Loftus Street, so I just wanted to know that we wouldn't have the same issues.
Oh, yes, good question. Thanks, Councillor Bushell. Sorry, you wouldn't have the generator. can take that on notice. Councillor Bushell, can we listen? Councillor Bushell.
Yeah, with the blood bank van, it had to move down to Loftus
Yes.
Street because of the noise that it generated. Just wanted to know whether there was any noise generated from this van, because the people that
We're aware
reside
of.
near there.
Thank you, Councillor Bushell. The General Manager, you can take it on notice.
I would take it on notice, apart from the fact that they could use the power in Paleface Park, which is probably not available elsewhere. But outside that, I'm not sure.
So we can take that on notice, Councillor Bushell, and we'll follow that up. Thank you very much. Councillor, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we grant the
Accede to the
health
request.
van set up in Hoxton Street or in Paleface Park.
Thank you.
And use the power.
Thank you. The Deputy Mayor has moved that Council accede to the request. Seconder for the motion, Councillor Good. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Discussion, Mr Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Go to Councillor Irvine.
I've just got one question, and I don't know whether we can address it to anyone here. Is there a more appropriate spot, because those car parks are heavily utilised? I know the breast screen van and other large things of this nature are being put down near the community centre where there is a lot more parking available on a regular basis. I know this is more central to town and probably in a little bit more pedestrian accessible location, but that's just a question for the organisers that, in my opinion, these car parks are heavily utilised and there are some more, some easier spaces to put the thing down the street.
Thanks, Councillor Irvine. I think it would be a reasonable request to ask, would they consider other locations? I don't see any harm in that. But Mr. General Manager, do you have any comment? No? That could be part of a motion, Councillor Irvine, if that was your wish. Or does the engineer wish to comment?
Only to say that I think originally Anne see me about this request, and I believe they were wanting to...
And who?
Mrs. Rands.
You're recorded.
Yeah. I believe they wanted to potentially park on the nature strip. I just don't know how practical that is in terms of, I guess if they supply all of the appropriate insurances and council wants to take that on as a I guess a job, in the fact that we would have to make the appropriate traffic control manoeuvres. But yeah, I think that was their first initial request, and we said it would be far easier just to go into the car parks as everybody else did. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillors, you have the correspondence there. What is your wish? Your wish, please, councillors. You're acceding to the... Oh, sorry, the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Good. I beg your pardon. We have a motion before us that we accede to the request. Did the mover and seconder wish to add anything to that about other locations, or are you happy as is after what you've heard? Happy, Councillor Good, you're happy as is? No amendment? Okay, if there's no further discussion or amendment, I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very, very much. Nothing of an urgent, late nature in terms of correspondence, Mr. General Manager?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. You going all right? He's not bunging it on. Now, councillors, we now proceed to 181 of your business paper, notice of motion. We have received a notice of motion. We have one from Councillor Irvine. You should receive that in loose leaf. All councillors have a copy. Yep. Thank you. So the notice of motion that reads, Temora Shire Council resolved to place a moratorium on any third-party works, developments, structures or modifications on, in, around or near any of Temora Shire Council's urban Temora stormwater or drainage assets until such time as all design work for future upgrades, modifications, expansion, etc. has been undertaken. If any section, this is a rather long motion, if any section is identified for upgrade that this moratorium, it was probably that and further, if any section is identified for upgrade that this moratorium be extended until the upgrade works have been completed. So Councillor Irvine, do you wish to move your notice of motion?
Yeah, I'll move that way.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Judd, second the motion. Thank you. Councillor Irvine, discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this has been dealt with in relation to the Aramet motoring DA that came before us recently, and it created some issues or red flags in my mind that if we were to allow any developments over our infrastructure and it turned out down the track that we had to do any capital works in those areas, then we'd be on the hook for the reinstatement of the third-party infrastructure, plus there'd be a inconvenience to, for example, the Aramet motoring in relation to their business and the interruption to their business at that point in time. So with the increased demand anticipated on the stormwater system being generated from the approved and future developments in certain areas, I think it prudent to make a black and white determination that nothing be put over council infrastructure until such time as there is a hard and fast plan to deal with that section or that part of the infrastructure, so that we don't have that situation occurring in the future.
Thanks very much, Councillor Irvine. Further discussion, Council, on the motion before you that Councillor Irvine and Councillor Judd have moved. I go to Councillor Bushell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just slightly confused by the motion. When we have, like, so you're saying stormwater assets, so I see every curb as a stormwater asset, is that right? So if anyone does an application for a new driveway which will involve that, does that mean that this will be part of the moratorium, or will you remove that step process from your moratorium?
So who are you directing that to, Councillor Bushell, that question, to the mover of the motion or to the engineer? Or
Mover of the motion.
Mover, okay, thank you. So question to Councillor Irvine.
Yeah, that's a fair comment, and obviously that hasn't been considered in the formation of the motion, and obviously from the notes and from the comments I made earlier, it's much more to do with the larger elements of the system, such as the open drains and any of those bigger type things, the general day-to-day street crossings and stuff like that, I wouldn't imagine are an issue. However, footbridges and stuff like that in, for example, Aurora Street may be subject to consideration within this.
Thank you, Councillor Irvine. Further comment or question, Councillor Bushell?
Just reading on past minutes and whatnot, I would see that generally we do receive this information at a DA status or at a request. We have that in the past of Aurora Street, so I do feel like it already comes to us anyway. So I'm not sure why the moratorium is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bushell. Did you wish to respond, Councillor Irvine?
Yeah, just in response to that, I would have thought the same. However, there seems to have been some confusion in relation to the Aramet project, where there was some various pieces of information were given to the applicant, and there was some confusion as to the suitability of that, and I just want to make sure that that's avoided in the future.
Thank you very much, Councillor Irvine. Other comments, views? I go to Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm not in favour of the motion, and there's a couple of reasons. One is that I would prefer to look at each development application on their merits, depending on how it's going to affect any of our structures at the time. Secondly, I think the notice of motion, if we passed it, if there was a development application to build anything over one of our assets, this could be rescinded anyway. And if we wanted to deal with it and allow it at the time. And thirdly, I think and as with the Aramet, it was pointed out that it is over our asset and the implications for that. So I think that it's something that, I don't think it's necessary.
Thanks very much, Councillor Good. I now go to Councillor Mclaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I feel that this sort of guidance for developers could be included in a future policy on development within our shire as one aspect of. I think sometimes when a DA comes to the council, there's been so much expense and work gone into it, and then we can't pick and choose which bits of the DA we like and don't, and that I think that a policy with these sorts of issues contained within it as a first point for developers to be guided of how council feels would save cost and time toing and froing. So I think it has merit, protecting our assets, particularly with the way stormwater and drainage is with these intense water movements these days. But as a more general point, I think a policy on development within our shire covering these sorts of issues and others that we've covered over the last few months, open spaces, etc., would be a good point for council to develop a policy for guidance. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Mclaren. Does the Director of Environmental Services, Town Planner, have any comment on what you've heard from councillors thus far, please?
Yeah, look, we have got a development control plan that's got 20 chapters that guide development in our shire. I think we have flagged an upgrade to our engineering standards within those DCPs. I'll hand that to the engineering manager.
The Engineering Services Manager.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. That's correct. It's actually, I think it's somewhat in our operational budget somewhere, but having the capacity to do it, it's not going to happen internally. It'd have to be an external thing, and I can see it coming at some expense. But I think with the development that is happening, would be worth its weight in gold. And I can see, it would save a lot of heartache where some of the things that have happened.
Thank you. Well, councillors, what you wish. You have a notice of motion before you that we've read out. What does the engineer would like to say now?
Oh, thanks, Mr Mayor. Just if it was to pass, I think it definitely needs clearing up because, a driveway over underground drainage pipe fits this description. A connection of a stormwater to curb and gutter fits this description. I after hearing the conversation, the intent is around our major open channel, but that definitely needs to be clarified if it was to pass.
Thank you. Pardon me. As it stands. Anyway, you have a motion that is before you that's been moved by Councillor Irvine and seconded Councillor Judd. You're all aware of the motion. Further discussion, Councillor Mclaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Those control documents you're talking about, are they readily available to developers and are they accessed regularly to guide their developments, or are they are they user friendly for a developer? Because I don't know much about what, as a councillor.
Good question. Thank you, Councillor Mclaren, the Director of Environmental Services.
DCP is very user friendly. The engineering standards, however, are not necessarily. They call up some Australian standards that aren't easily accessible, and that's why we flagged it as something to do to make them a little bit more tailored to Moorshire. And it's something that we have wanted to do, but it's just a resourcing issue.
Thank you. Further, Councillor Mclaren.
Do you see scope for a more generalised policy on more general guidance at a layman's level for councils, and as a first point, just to cover some of those larger issues like this might cover?
Thank you. The Director, Environmental Services.
The way we've done the development consent for the two major developments, Highfield and Dustin Rose, the developers have been really appreciative of the work that the engineer has put in. He's really gone through the development and laid it out, included diagrams, lots of details in the consent. A little bit unusual, but highly appreciated. If we had something a little bit more user-friendly, we could readily refer them to that, and the manager wouldn't have to do that level of input, but that's the way we've got around it in these cases.
Thank you. I go now to Councillor Good.
I'd just like to make a comment about carrying out developments in Temora. In my profession, we deal with a lot of developers in a lot of shires. The Temora Shire Council is by far and away the best council to deal with development. It's the easiest to deal with. There are several councils not too far from our council that almost hunt people away by making it so difficult. I have not heard anything other than compliments for our shire in relation to how they deal with developments.
Thanks very much, Councillor Good, and it's nice to hear that, so thank you for sharing that. I go to Councillor Bushell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wondering with our connections with REROC, because it's not, we're not alone as a small council with the development of the engineering standards. Is that something that we could bring up to REROC through our engineers to maybe work collectively for the smaller councils to maybe, rather than like, a bit of cost sharing, rather than all of us trying to deal with it all at once, because everyone is dealing with stormwater issues, so we're not alone. I just wondered whether that was something that we could consider.
That's good. Thanks, Councillor Bushell. Something that'll be worth considering. The engineer, do you have a comment, or the director? Who's first? The engineer, are you wanting to comment or not?
I'll wait.
You'll wait. Keep your powder dry. The Director of Environmental
I'll
Services.
say in theory that's a good idea, but often it can overcomplicate things with, you're dealing with someone like Wagga City who's got, different issues and standards and expectations than, a small rural council like us. So in theory, possibly. In practice, difficult.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, Councillor, on your wind-up debate, Councillor...
Yeah, so realistically, this motion has emanated purely from the probably the poor experience that the applicant from the Aramet may deem that they had, and the extra costs that they incurred having some engineering done that probably wasn't much hope of passing at the time. So, at the very least, it's come to council's attention that this is an issue and that the stormwater system is going to come under some serious scrutiny in the next few years when it has to absorb the increased flows that are going to be generated by these future developments. So, realistically, this motion, and it can be reworded, and it can be put down as a note simply for the planning department that anything to do with the stormwater, the major components of the stormwater system, must be treated very carefully until we have all of the planning done to accommodate the increases in future flows anticipated in that system.
Thank you, Councillor Irvine. I go to Councillor Bushell. We do going to wind up debate, but Councillor Bushell, and if the Deputy Mayor wishes to speak, and then the engineer, we need to move on. Councillor Bushell.
For me, the moratorium just sort of goes on to more of a delegated area. It's no different. I know that we're talking about this one development because it was an issue, but it's no different for another development to come along that's got acoustic issues, and the person has to develop and pay for an acoustic engineer to come along. Everyone has to expend in their development to come through to us as a decision. So I don't see how we keep on going back to this one. And I don't see how a moratorium could fix it. I think a delegated approach is the key. And when it becomes too tricky, the DA comes to us or whatnot. So I don't see any sort of need for a moratorium.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bushell. I go to the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm on similar thoughts to Councillor Bushell, actually. I think moratorium is a bit too
Extreme.
wording. I think if it's worded something along like Councillor Mclaren just said a while ago, there's noted that that the particular engineering staff and so forth are aware of when something comes forward that they perhaps look at it, make sure there's not going to be an issue or something. I think there's too many other things can get wrapped up into it that might not necessarily need to. So.
Some
I
collateral
think
damage.
if the motion was watered down a bit, I think it'd be a lot better.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I go to the engineer and then we'll put the motion. The engineer.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, listen, all I was going to say is that I agree with Councillor Mclaren's approach. Definitely this stuff could be captured in a bit of a review of the development control plans and development of engineering guidelines for subdivisions. It's a massive job, and I think REROC, there would be a lot of councils that maybe already have it, and then there'll be other councils that aren't really interested in it. And it really requires council to work quite closely with either do it ourselves, but I wouldn't advocate for that. It would be to get somebody to do the engineering guidelines and then work very closely with them as to what council wants, so it's tailored to what Temora Shire wants. What currently happens at the moment is I cherry pick the Wagga City Council's engineering guidelines for subdivision development and apply them at the consent stage, which is be not ideal. It'd be better to go the other way.
Thank you. Councillors, you have a motion, notice of motion before you. We've had adequate...
I'm going to move an amendment, please.
Oh, that's... Thank you. Councillor Mclaren, an amendment. Thank you.
Can I move that council officers seek to develop engineering standards for a forthcoming report on
For a future
development
report.
control amendments or something? Report,
Okay, let's see
Over to you,
how we
Liz.
go. Engineer, you can assist. You're right. Would you like to assist? Mr. Engineer, please.
I just say that that council resolved for staff to provide a report that details.
Is anyone listening to this?
Yeah.
Can
Council
you start
staff
again, please?
just council staff to provide a report to council in relation to the requirements or details of updating the development control plans and engineering guidelines for subdivision development to be delivered by the town planner.
Unbelievable. Right, did we capture that, please, or...
We need a seconder. We need a seconder before the motion can be put into the system.
Well, we get the motion right. Is someone prepared to second what you've heard? Thank you, Councillor Bushell. Right. So Councillor Mclaren, Councillor Bushell have moved an amendment. How'd you go? Oh, Claire, good. Thank you, Town Planner. So DCP Development Control Plan, that's what it is, isn't it? Engineering guidelines.
Sorry,
See,
it should be further than stormwater management. It's, you know, sewer, it's curb and gutter.
Yeah, it's everything.
It's everything.
Yeah.
It's not just.
so can we capture that, please?
You can stop at guidelines pretty much, can't you?
Righto. Okay, so yeah, then council are aware of, okay. So, Councillor Mclaren, are you happy with what's written?
Yes.
Thank you, and the amendment? Councillor Bushell, are you happy?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. To present it, yeah, at a future council meeting, yeah, okay. So it's been moved, the amendment's been moved and seconded, and I'm going to now put the closed discussion. And we now will put the amendment to you, and that is that Councillor Mclaren and Councillor Bushell have moved that council staff provide a report to council regarding updating the DCP Development Control Plan and engineering guidelines to be presented at a future meeting of council. I will put that amendment to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare the amendment carried. The amendment now becomes the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. And we got there, and I think, Councillor Irvine, I think you'd even be happy that ultimately you're getting what you want, which is appropriate. So thank you very much. Councillors, do we have any urgent business without notice? Councillor Judd.
Question to the General Manager. Just going back on the correspondence from the Mary Gilmore Festival, and could you just outline what you've seen now as the conditions for the use of the mobile stage? Like, it seems obvious from the requirements there that staff have got to be there to open and shut it every day. Could you just outline the conditions, please?
Thank you, Councillor Judd. The General Manager.
Yeah, I think it's certainly the proposal that we'll be putting to council in the future is that staff set it up and take it down. Simply because we've had some well-meaning community groups that haven't followed procedures on the erection of the stage, not only the new one, the old one as well. And we've had, particularly on the old one, significant damage. So, the view was that the council staff should put it up and take it down. The difficulty, unlike most events where it's a one up, one down task, the Mary Gilmore Festival's quite a extensive event and requires setting up and taking down several times, quite a few times. So that's the background to it. It may be that for a special event like that, we could get someone to be trained up. The difficulty is what we've found, not so much with Mary Gilmore Festival, with other groups. The people who are trained aren't necessarily the ones who do the work, and we've even found that when our staff are setting it up, people, again, good meaning, come in and try to help, but create problems because of that. So I guess it depends on what you want to do in terms of the life of the stage. The way to extend it is to make sure that it's the same people doing it over and over again. So that's the background to it.
Okay, thank you. Further urgent business without notice. Councillors, I just want to remind councillors, of course, I informally met the consultants for Temora District Hospital yesterday. About 3 hours. It was quite a very, very interesting session. So just to remind you that, of course, Monday the 2nd of May at 12:30 we'll be enjoying lunch for those that are able to attend with one of the consultants. The other one can't come on that Monday the 2nd. And then we've got them till 2 o'clock, and then 3 o'clock they'll be meeting with the local health advisory council up at the hospital, and then at 6 p.m, of course, will be the community consultation meeting at the ex-services club, and that is also important. And there's also surveys that will be available in paper form, online, etc., for those that may not able to be at the public meeting, or even those that are able to be there and would like to have their say in the survey form. This is an important process, councillors. We all acknowledge that. I think it is fantastic that that Murrumbidgee are keen to seek out council's views in relation to the clinical services plan. Now, just remember, we're not necessarily going to get every single thing that we want, but there is a genuine desire from Murrumbidgee Local Health District, given instructions to the consultants that Temora District Hospital, they need to remain a district hospital and be enhanced in terms of theatre and so on, because Wagga Base simply cannot handle what they are handling. So that was music to my heart and ears when I heard these consultants saying that yesterday. So this is a very exciting time. It's going to be a heck of a lot of work for the working party particularly, but this is a very exciting time, and I'm so thrilled that council will have a couple of hours to spend with our, or an hour and a half at least, with our consultant, and we can have that genuine input. For those that aren't able to be there, because again I know there's lots on, please send me something that you may have on your heart in terms of services, etc., that you'd like included. So that is what I would like to share with you, and of course looking forward to honouring this Anzac Day, our ex-servicemen and women, both those that have come home and those that have made the ultimate sacrifice. It is a very, very special time, and look forward to hosting our ex-servicemen representatives tomorrow evening for a reception in their honour, and commend the work of our executive assistant, Mrs. Rands, who is the secretary of the Anzac Day Committee, and you and your team do a marvellous job. And of course, all those across the Shire, Area Park and Springdale, have very special services indeed. Thank you. Is there any other urgent business without notice? If not, a motion please receiving the information paper. Thank you. The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Judd, moved and seconded. All those of that opinion please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Councillors, you will note on page 185 that it did say November 2021. I understand that's meant to read. Yes, the engineering works manager did apologise for that minor error. Any other items, councillors, that you wish to highlight out of the information paper? If not, in accordance with Section 10A of the Local Government Act 1993, I advise that there are several matters that are deemed confidential, and accordingly I require a motion to have those matters considered. The Deputy Mayor, thank you. Seconder for the motion, please. Seconder, Councillor Mclaren, thank you. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you, councillors, members of senior staff. We resume into open council, and I advise that the following motions have been brought forward from closed session into open session. And those motions are as follows. On the motion of the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, and seconded Councillor Mclaren, we moved into confidential at 6:33 p.m. Minutes of the Assets and Operations Committee held on the 12th of April 2022. On the motion of the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, and seconded Councillor Mclaren, it was resolved that the reports be received. The motion was carried. On the motion of Councillor Bushell and Councillor Oliver, it was resolved that the reports and recommendations as presented be adopted, and the motion was carried. Minutes of the Economic Development and Visitations Committee held on the 12th of April 2022. On the motion of Councillor Mclaren and Councillor Judd, it was resolved that the reports be received. The motion was carried. On the motion of the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, and seconded Councillor Oliver, it was resolved that the reports and recommendations as presented be adopted, and the motion was carried. Gravel crushing tender. On the motion of Councillor Oliver and Councillor Good, it was resolved that Council note a temporary price increase of 50 cents per tonne for gravel wining and crushing. Is it wining or winning? Winning, I beg your pardon, how it looks. Winning and crushing was granted above the $6 tender rate in relation to unforeseen circumstances with fuel price increases at the time. Tender is contract number GC001-2021-22, and further that an extension of the current winning and gravel crushing tender be awarded to Calvani Crushing for 1 year to conclude the 30th of June 2023 and allowable in the terms of the current tender for Class A gravel quarries. This would also come with a 1 year extension for Class B gravel quarries for winning and stockpiling of gravel awarded to News Earth Moving, and the motion was carried. Temora Caravan Parks expression of interest. On the motion of Councillor Mclaren and Councillor Irvine, it was resolved that Council form a subcommittee to discuss the potential for a lease with the interested party, and further that the Economic Development Manager provide a future report on opportunities to upgrade the caravan parks. That motion was carried. On the motion of Councillor Mclaren and Councillor Judd, that the following councillors and staff be nominated as members of the Temora Caravan Park Subcommittee: Councillor Irvine, Councillor Furman, Economic Development Manager, Town Planner, Director of Environmental Services, and that motion was carried. Open Spaces New Development. On the motion of Councillor Bushell and Councillor Oliver, it was moved that Council note the report and move no action. An amendment was put on the motion of Councillor Mclaren and Councillor Irvine that Council engage in further discussions regarding the preparation of voluntary planning agreement with the developer for the provision of open spaces. The amendment was put and lost, and the motion was put and carried. Bob Aldridge Amenities Building Tender. On the motion of Councillor Bushell and the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, it was resolved that Council note the 3 shortlisted tenderers for this project and receive a tender evaluation report via email for their consideration and decision, with the decision to be ratified at the May Council meeting. That motion was carried. On the motion of Councillor Good and Councillor Oliver, it was resolved that Council moves the motions from closed business into open council, and the motion was carried. On the motion of Councillor Bushell and Councillor Good, it was resolved that Council moves out of closed council and into open council at 7:59 p.m. So, councillors, those are the resolutions, and may I have a motion, please, to have them formally adopted in open council. Thank you, Councillor Bushell. Seconded, Councillor Good. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, full-time, sorry. To the contrary, no. I declare the motion carried. Thank you very much, councillors, senior staff. It has been a full-on productive meeting, and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.